Arcs is a 2 to 4 player wargame where each player acts as a leader, trying to guide their faction/empire through a chaotic space opera. The main central board of the game looks like this, and depending on the player count, some of these areas will be blocked off as shown on the setup card. Each player is also then given a player board of their chosen color, along with some ships, agents, and some triangular tokens which cover some part of the board like so. Some of your ships and tokens are also placed on the board following the setup card, so the board will look a little something like this. Each player will also receive 2 starting resources, matching the 2 starting planets their tokens are currently in. And finally, each player will also be given 6 of these action cards. You are now ready to play the game. You win the game by having the most victory points at the end of 5 chapters. So how do you get points? Well, on this side of the game board, there are 5 listed possible scoring rules, also known as ambitions. For example, the Tycoon ambition simply checks who has the most sum of material and fuel resources. So if this scoring marker is right here, the person who has the most sum of both resources at the end of the chapter will get the higher points, while the second place player will only get the lower points instead. This works exactly the same as the Keeper and Empath ambitions down here, though these 2 ambitions are each looking for a different type of resource. The Tyrant ambition right here checks for the amount of captives that you have in your captive area, while the Warlord ambition right here checks for the trophies area instead. At the start of each chapter, the ambitions area will be empty, meaning that no scoring is allocated yet. But players can eventually place these scoring markers to these ambitions, which I'll explain in a bit. Anyways, the game is played turn by turn clockwise, starting from whoever has got the first player marker. Remember these funny looking cards that you start with? Well, you always play one of these cards from your hand at the start of your turn. These cards have some trick-taking elements in it. If you don't know what that means, you know how normal cards have spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds as suits? Well, it's the same concept, except that we have these kinda mouthful suit names instead. Now, if you are the first player to play a card in a round, life is good for you as you can literally play any card from your hand. So let's say that you are playing this card. Since this is the first card of the round, your card will be placed on this lead spot like so. The cards that you play will determine what you can do on your turn. Before we resolve the cards though, you can do some optional actions in between called the prelude action. Basically, there are various optional actions that you can do, but each different action requires a different resource. So, for example, I could use this fuel resource to perform a move action. This is probably not gonna make a lot of sense right now because I haven't told you what these actions do or mean. So for now, let's just say that we won't be doing any of these optional actions, but keep in mind that this prelude action does exist, as I will refer back to it later. Anyways, back to this card that we just played. The suit of the card itself does not tell you much, but right below it does tell you all the actions that it lets you do. In this case, it's either tax or repair or influence. And these pips next to them will tell you how many times in total you can do those actions. For this particular card, you can do a total of 4 actions distributed however you like. So for example, you can do tax repair influence, or tax influence, and so on and so forth. And don't worry, I'll eventually explain to you what these actions mean. As you might have noticed, the card that you play will determine what you can do on your turn. Also, because you are the first person to play a card this round, you can optionally declare an ambition by placing this token on your card like so. What this does is it lets you put the highest scoring tile onto this ambition. Why this particular ambition? Well, because it's the one that matches your card. Anyways, after playing a card and doing the card's actions, your turn ends and it's now the next player clockwise's turn. Just like the first player, they have to start their turn by playing a card. But since there is already a card in the lead, the player has to play a card in response to the lead card. Now, there are 3 ways to do this. The first and probably the best way for you to respond is to surpass. This can be done by playing a card with the same suit, in this case also administration, but the number on the played card must be higher than the lead card. So in this case, this one administration card cannot be used to surpass. But if ambition were declared at the start of the round, which would have set the lead card's number to 0, then this card could have been played. Anyways, when you surpass, you get to use your card fully just like when you play a lead card, meaning that you get to use all of these pips on the card. However, if you don't have a card that can surpass the lead card, you unfortunately have to either copy or pivot. Copying is done by putting any one card face down. Just like the name of the action, this lets you copy the lead card, which allows you to access the various actions that this card suit provides. However, you only get one single pip of action. On the other hand, you can instead pivot by playing any one card face up. This actually lets you do something different because you are playing a different card suit, but similar to copying, you now only have one pip of action. So you only get to fully use your card's actions when you either lead or surpass. Once everyone has played a card and done their actions, we will then see who wins the card trick for this round. You first ignore all cards that do not follow the lead card suit, and out of the remaining cards, see who has got the highest number. In this case, this player wins this round streak and gets the first player marker for the next round. However, there is actually another way to forcefully take the first player marker earlier. Say you are this guy and you really want to be first next round, but you know that you cannot win this round streak with your cards. What you can do, in addition to the card that you play, is to play another card face down next to it. This will let you seize the first player marker for the next round, and this is guaranteed because the marker can only change ownership once per round. Therefore, it doesn't matter anymore who wins the trick at the end of this round. Similarly, you have these number 7 cards only in 4-player games, which will instantly let you seize the first player marker if you surpass with one of these cards. Okay, so now that you know how your turn works, let's quickly go over the actions that you can do. First off, we have build, which you can access via the construction suite. Build lets you put these ships or buildings on the board. Each one of your starport will let you build one ship in the same region, while your ships will let you build buildings which are starports or cities also in the same region. Though buildings can only be built if there is an unoccupied space in that area. So, for example, if I use this card, I could use 2 out of the 3 action pips to build a ship right here and right here, as I have a starport on each area, and then I can use my last pip to build a city in this empty spot right here, as I have this ship that I just built in the same region. Though if any of these areas were dominated by an enemy, meaning that they have more ships than you, the ships and cities that you build will be damaged. Each ship and building in the game essentially has 2 life points. When any of these things take exactly 1 hit, they are considered damaged. This is represented by toppling the ship meeple and flipping the building tokens. Ships that are damaged do not count towards majorities. So in this example, blue player still has the majority in this area as he has more healthy ships than yellow. Also, each time you build a city on the board, you take the city token from your player board, which will free up your board to let you put more resources. Additionally, if you place enough cities, you will get extra points when you are the sole first place winner in any ambition. Up next, we have the repair action also from the construction suite, which lets you repair any one of your building or ships for 1 pip of action. Then we have the tax action from the administration suite. You can tax each one of your cities once per round to get the corresponding resource, and you don't need your own ship there to tax them. You can also tax other players' cities as long as you have majority control in that area. Taxing this way does not make you steal the enemy's resource as you still take it from the reserve, but you also get one of the player's agents to be put in the captive section of your board. And just as a reminder, this works towards the tyrant ambition. Up next, we have the move action, which you can actually access from these 2 suits. 1 pip of this action lets you move a group of your ships from one area to an adjacent area. So if you want to move further, you need to spend more pips. However, if you move from a region that has your own starport, you may instead use the way better catapult action. Catapulting lets you move as many spaces as you want until you reach one of these outer areas which always has a planet in it, or when you reach one of these numbered gates that has an enemy majority. So, for example, from this area, you can catapult this way and stop on a planet, or you could also have gone all the way here and stop because this gate is controlled by red. Also, you could have left your ships along the way. Okay, time out. I'm sure you know by now that each suit lets you do rather limited things. Only these 2 suits allow you to move, while only this 1 suit allow you to tax. You know, there's no one card that lets you do both. So that means it will take you 2 turns to do both actions, right? No, actually, because this is where the prelude actions that I've talked about becomes useful. So what you can do is play this card to tax and use a fuel resource to do 1 move action. Both of these done in the same turn. You can do as many prelude actions as you want as long as you can pay the resource costs. Anyways, back to our actions, we also have the influence and secure action which you can get from these suits. Both of these actions are related to these court cards, and 4 of these random court cards are always laid out next to the board. You can use 1 pip of influence to place your agent on any one of these cards. If you have the majority number of agents on any of these cards, you can then use 1 pip of secure to take one of those cards. You will also capture all enemy agents on that same card, putting them in your captive area. There are 2 main card types that you can get. This first type is very simple as it is a one-off use card that activates its return effect right away. The other one though stays with you and usually gives you consistent passive benefits. It also has a resource icon printed on the top right corner, which counts towards the majorities when you check for that particular ambition. So in this case, you are counted as having 1, 2, 3 of the resources. And finally, we have battle as our last action, which you can get from the aggression suit. 1 battle pip lets you fight someone that is in the same area as you. If there's more than 1 enemy, you can only choose one of them. Battling is actually pretty simple. For each ship that you have, you get to roll 1 die. Though there are 3 types of dice to choose from. Firstly, the blue or skirmish die is a simple 50-50 attack or miss. If say you roll 2 damage like this, you can distribute distribute the damage however you want. For example, you can just apply the 2 damage on one ship, which will destroy it. It will then also be added into your trophy pile. Or you can instead hit 2 ships once, causing both of them to be injured, which lets you gain the majority in that area. The blue dice is generally a pretty safe choice. The red one, or the assault dice on the other hand, lets you do more damage, but it's more of a double-edged sword, as some of the symbols will do damage to you instead. This flame icon indicates 1 damage to yourself, while this intercept icon deals 1 damage to you for each healthy ship that the enemy has. So if you had rolled an intercept in this battle, you would still do 1 damage because of this 1 hit, but you will get 3 damage back because of the intercept. Though if you roll more than 1 intercept, only 1 of them would be resolved. And lastly, we have the orange or raid die. Unlike the previous 2 dice, this die can only target buildings and not ships. So you can only choose this die if there is an enemy building in the same area. This symbol indicates 1 damage to a building, while this key symbol indicates your stealing power. See, none of your cards' no resources are ever safe. They are always a number of keys away from being stolen by someone else. So yes, the enemy would only need to roll 2 keys to take this card from you, while just 1 key is needed to steal this resource from this slot. Or even better, if someone managed to roll 3 keys, they can just take both of them away from you. Getting your stuff stolen can be pretty devastating, but the action also comes with its own big risks. For one, you need to have at least 1 ship remaining to steal. What this means is, if the damages from the rolled dice were to completely wipe off all of your ships in that battle, you cannot steal anything regardless of how many keys you roll. Though the worst thing that you can do by far is to destroy one of the buildings. Destroying a starport is fine because it only adds to your trophy pile. Destroying a city on the other hand, oh, that's where shit hits the fan. When you destroy a city, you will provoke outrage. First, you need to know what resource that city produces. In this example, it produces fuel. You then have to lose everything related to that resource, which will be your guild cards with a fuel symbol on it like this, and any of the fuel resources that you have on your board. And then you will also lose access to the fuel prelude action permanently. You can still gain all fuel related stuff again after this, but you can never use the fuel resource for prelude actions ever again, which could have let you move. Not everything is bad though, because you also get to ransack the corp. What this means is, since we just blew up red player's city, we get to take 1 card from the guild card display, but we can only take 1 that has red's agents on it, like this or this. All of the agents that are on it then goes to your trophy area instead of your captive area. Note that all these isn't unique to only the orange/red die. You can destroy buildings unintentionally with the other die types if you roll way too many hits on them. And yeah, that's basically all the rules to play this game. You keep playing the cards from your hand and do its actions round by round until you have played the last card in your hand. That will be the end of 1 chapter, where you score all the ambitions called within that chapter. If Warlord is scored, everyone then returns everything from their trophy pile to the respective owners. And similarly, if Tyrant is scored, everything in your captive area is returned. There are 5 chapters in a game, but a game can end early if anyone has reached a certain victory point threshold depending on player count. If no one has met the criteria, you simply begin a new chapter. The cards are reshuffled and you are dealt 6 cards again. And then all of the scoring tokens are returned, and the lowest scoring token also gets flipped, which increases the points and therefore the stake as the round progresses. Whoever has got the most points when the game ends will be the winner. The game also comes with these 2 mini expansion modules. These can be boiled down to basically just unique player powers, though this one in particular will also determine your starting setup. You'll be drafting for these cards before the game starts until each player has 1 of each card, and that's it. So, how good or bad is Arcs? Honestly, I'm kinda in the middle with this one, but let's start with the things that I actually like. Despite the lengthy rules and many small things you need to remember, the game is surprisingly quite simple and straightforward. For example, scoring is basically just majorities in different things, and most of the actions that you can do are also quite elementary, maybe except the battle action. There are also some occasional special rules, but even these are not that convoluted. And even if you are not familiar with trick taking, it's also quite intuitive and you'll most likely get it within the first few rounds. Knowing what to do on the other hand is not that easy. Aside from maybe the rush to build cities ASAP when the game starts, there wasn't really anything that stands out as the obvious move to do. The game is also quite fun, but in a really mean and chaotic way. If you prefer your games to have minimum interaction and luck, you know, Euros, you will hate this game 100%, like don't even bother. But if you're like me and don't mind some meanness and randomness here and there, for example, Lords of Vegas and El Grande are probably my top 10 games, then you might like this game. The most interesting thing in Arcs though is definitely the card play, but this is also where things get a bit controversial. On one hand, I genuinely think that this mechanic is quite clever and unique, but on the other hand, the mechanic feels quite prone to frustrating situations despite the mitigations in place. See, unless you get an extremely bad hand, which is very unlikely to happen, there's always going to be some ways to play around your hand's weakness. Let's first go through some examples. The first scenario is when you have too many high numbered cards. Since high cards don't have a lot of action pips, you are bound to do less things on that round. However, high cards lets you win tricks, which gives you the first player marker. And when you start around with a high card, you're basically forcing most if not all players to pivot or copy, because there's not a lot of cards that can surpass your high card, meaning you are leveling the playing field by also reducing everyone's actions. And of course, you can always boost your actions by using resources to do prelude actions. Moving on to scenario number 2, where you instead have too many low numbered cards. Low cards have a lot of action pips on them, but they are near impossible to fully use unless you are the first player in a round or someone declares an ambition. The best way around this is to forcefully take the first player marker by playing an extra card from your hand. This will then guarantee you first turn next round, allowing you to fully use a card's action pips. Yes, doing this will make you lose one round in a chapter because you will run out of cards one round earlier, but it's not as bad as it sounds. Realistically, you are most likely to use them to pivot or copy instead, which is just one action pip per turn. But if you forcefully take the first player marker to surpass, you essentially gain up to 4 actions over 2 turns, which averages to more than 1 action pip per turn. You still lose something though, which would be reaction time. Skipping your turn just before scoring is not great, as you cannot react to anyone else's actions in that last round. And finally, the third and probably the worst scenario for me is when you don't have a particular suit. There are 4 card suits in the game, but only 3 of them have actions that are unique to only that suit. So if you don't have any of these 3 suits, you don't have reliable access to those actions. Sadly, the easiest way out of this one is to burn your resources for prelude actions, or wait until someone leads with that suit and you copy it. To me, the worst suit to not have by far is the administration suit, as taxing is such an easy way to get resources, and there's not really a specific prelude action for it. Okay, so these are good, right? Like every bad scenario has a way out? Well, technically yes, but it's also pretty annoying. These mitigations are not free, as they likely cost you resources that, as we know, can be part of a scoring check. And because your options dwindle towards the end of each chapter, no matter how diverse your hand is, this will be a constant struggle. And for a game that plays for at least 2 hours per session, this quickly became a nuisance for me. And say you were able to plan for these things ahead of time. Let's also hope that no one steals anything away before you can use them. Some of these code cards can help, but they are random, not free, and can also be stolen. The modules, while being a great addition to this game, doesn't really solve this issue. Yes, some of the leaders can make your pivot and copy actions better, but they also handicap you in other ways, like disabling your prelude actions. All in all, Arcs is a very chaotic and random game, and it does not apologize for it. The best way to enjoy this game to me is to treat it like a party game. Don't take it too seriously or personally, and try to make the best of what the game has given you. Though its biggest downfall for me by far is just how restrictive it can be. Struggling to do basic actions is never fun in my book, so I wish they could have made this a bit more lax. Overall, I will give this game a 6 out of 10. I would play this game again once in a while, but I probably won't be looking for it. And yeah, that's finally it for this review. Check out my channel for more reviews like this and leave a comment down below.